Right, we're going to get into sub-intel, which are hints, indicative, and confirmation of previous pieces we've put out, and also warnings, what people need to take heed of. And most of this sub-intel is based on two things: gun control and white supremacy, or the perception of it. They are the two programs they're running, and as you will see, it's not just in America either. Now, this piece was written for the BBC with the latest agenda-driven script-based writer by the name of Anthony Zurcher, out of Texas, apparently that man is. And he wrote, "It's become a familiar refrain after every mass shooting in the US. Will this time be different? Will outrage over the violence compel political action, as it has done in the UK after Dunblane, which was a staged event to cover up child paedophilia, Australia after Port Arthur, and most recently New Zealand after Christchurch? Among gun control activists, there is a certain amount of resignation whenever a new incident splashes across the headlines. If public sentiment did not force action after the 2012 Newtown shooting, when 26 people, including 20 young children, were killed in a Connecticut school, Newtown, and nothing will ever change." That's Sandy Hook, isn't it? Funny how they just changed the names, isn't it? I'm sure that's Sandy Hook. Perhaps one of the members can confirm that. And I didn't realise that. But it's a common theme how they just shift the name and the change in the vowels that they use with their own names, never mind with certain places and countries. What was Czechoslovakia? Where's Czechoslovakia now? Where's Yugoslavia now? All gone, hidden in other fake names. And he went on, "If the double tragedy of El Paso and Dayton ends up being different, however, here are a few possible explanations. Recent mass shootings in the US have been attributed to a variety of causes: disaffected youth, Parkland and Santa Fe, mental illness, Annapolis, workplace conflict, Virginia Beach, and family discord, Sutherland Springs. The deadliest such incident in modern US history, the 2017 shooting at a music concert in Las Vegas that claimed 58 lives, still has no attributed motive. 2 years on after the Vegas incident, and nothing. Does it ever get mentioned? No. You're not telling me that the FBI and the CIA, after 2 years, haven't found a motive, or perhaps they have, and you know who the real motive and why it was done. Perhaps they need to read the alt media more instead of fact-checking nonsense. In this case, however, all evidence indicated that the El Paso shooting was a calculated political act drawn from the white nationalist rhetoric that has become increasingly prominent in modern US politics, which is a swipe at Trump. In that way, it's more akin to last October's Pittsburgh, they can't go without mentioning what happened to the synagogue shooting, which prompted discussions about rising anti-Semitism. The two always go together. Whenever there's an incident, the victim police of anti-Semitism always pop up. It's a common theme. Yes, we know that Jewish people are not being treated right, none more than their own leaders. But ramming it down people's throats of only one group is the victim, or only one group is the perpetrator, is wrong on both counts. All the violence in Charlottesville, which served as a jarring display of the strength of the modern white supremacist movement. That was written by Mr. Zurcher in the BBC in the UK. You'll see there'll be more incidents as this sub-intel unfolds. But it's time for the BBC and the agency scriptwriters to change their fake narrative and address the real issues of fear-generated false flag events. There's your scoop. There's your real story. Who is doing it and why? Now, these events does not necessarily mean some didn't die. No one's discounting that. But like I said earlier, I can't prove whether people died or not, and neither can most of the people who listen to this show. We're going on assumption, not fact. But the real story involves Langley, Montauk, and Mengele-based psyops done under mind control techniques. That's the real scoop. And this is the real issue here, and it does need attention from all people in the alt media. Add in the fact that these extremist groups, as they're called, KKK, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, white supremacy, you name what, call it all you like, they were all created by the same think tank groups. When you cover that, Mr. Zurcher, then you have a real story. Not there's the boogeyman. The boogeyman currently is the white man. It has been for the last over 100 years. They've smudged the issue that it's this issue and that issue, but that's the real agenda, and you'll see why as we carry on. Something that we'd been mentioned previous, the American middle class, and how it's collapsing. We don't need so-called financial experts or clown portal people to tell us that. But there was a report out this week is that the middle class has fallen deeper into debt to maintain a middle class lifestyle. Please stop doing it. Why? It's only a status. A home is something to live in, not a status symbol. Fancy cars, a car is something to get you from A to B, it's not a status symbol. And when you understand that, a lot less people will be in debt. But cars, college, houses and medical care have become steadily more costly, but incomes have largely remained stagnant for 2 decades. Despite a recent uptick, it still doesn't cover the shortfall. Filling the gap between earning and spending is an explosion of finance into nearly every corner of the consumer economy. Consumer debt, not counting mortgages, has now climbed to $4 trillion. $4 trillion. Higher than it's ever been after adjusting for inflation. Mortgage debt slid after the financial crisis a decade ago, but is now rebounding. Student debt totaled $1.5 trillion last year. $1.5 trillion of debt passed on to the children to learn shite. They're not teaching them nothing of any value anyway. And that student debt exceeds all other forms of consumer debt except mortgages. Car debt is up nearly 40% in the last decade to $1.3 trillion. And the average loan for new cars is up an inflation adjusted 11% in a decade. The average loan is $32,000 per car. $32,000. You know, it's not that long ago. A couple of decades you could buy a whole house for that. And land. And that's the average. 32,000. So most of them are 60, 70,000 for a car. You know, we've lost all sense of value of what is important in life. $60,000, $70,000 for a car. I don't really care if it's laced in gold. It's still not relevant. The idea that Americans are middle class is an illusion. All of it is an illusion. You're not middle class. You are working class with a massive amount of credit card debt that gives the illusion of being middle class. And the sooner we all get off this status of class, the sooner we all get out of debt. Because we're all doing it to each other. One neighbour gets a new car, the next one goes and buys a bigger, more expensive car. All you're doing is putting yourself in more debt. Status is costly for us all, and a ruination of a whole nation, because far too many in this country, and the Western world I might add, has bought into the credit card debt cycle. And it's ruining all our lives. Just to go and go, ooh, look at my nice shiny car, or ooh, look at my house, ooh, look, I've got a pool. Really? And you're paying 7 years of hundreds of dollars a month, or 30 years of thousands of dollars a month just to impress other people, most of which those people are envious. Again, it's not creating a good cycle, is it? And this is what we talk about in this show, of thinking different. We have to jump off items, materialistic items, particularly items that are essential. And a car is largely essential in America now because we have no infrastructure. And a home is for living in, not to impress or make your friends and circle envious. We have to stop it. Pope Francis chimed in, I wish he hadn't, this week, with this statement: let us pray that the Lord will free the victims of human trafficking and help us to respond actively to the cry for help of so many of our brothers and sisters who are deprived of their dignity and freedom. Fair comment, the last. It's the Lord aspect that bothers me, and the church aspect. Because it was the Lord and his bunch of lizard minions who started that shit, passed it down to and through the churches and into the houses. Oops. The Lord is dead and will not be returning. Praying is not the answer, because if prayers worked, that shit wouldn't have happened to begin with. Let's get it right. But deal with it in hard actions is the answer, not waffle. Where are we next? BBC again doesn't like Mr. Trump because, why? Because MI5, MI6 run the BBC along with GCHQ and the Blue Dragon Group, who love Anne. That's Hillary for those who are new to the show. But the BBC labelled a person a Trump supporter. Like, since when has political persuasion been brought into criminal acts? It's a criminal act, not what party he supports. But these are different times. And a Trump supporter who admitted sending mail bombs to critics of the US president has now been jailed for 20 years. Cesar Sayoc, a 57-year-old ex-pizza delivery man from Florida, posted 16 pipe bombs to 13 targets last October. And prosecutors called for a life sentence for Sayoc, who said it was motivated by hate-filled ideology. Now, the issue is why and since when has political persuasion been mentioned as a motive for crime? Only when an agenda is being ran, and these agendas are racking up on a daily basis, and the members need to watch for it and call it out. That's how we stop it, not ignore them, shut them up. State facts. They don't like that. But one wonders, when is there going to be a crime in Boston? If this is the way things are going to be reported, when there's a next major crime in Boston, are we going to see the headline, Boston Red Sox supporter who are linked with Standard Charter and child trafficking commits a murder, to make the headlines? Will we ever see that? No, of course we won't. It's not in the agenda. And it goes on round the world. This is in China, responding to the Australian government. China this week sharply rebuked an Australian government MP for comparing the West's approach to China to what he called the catastrophic failure to hold back Nazi Germany. Connecting the dots now: white supremacists, Trump, Nazi Germany, Nazis, anti-Semitism, it's all one package. Then we go to Germany itself. Fears of far-right violence are growing in Germany after politician Walter Lübcke was shot dead in June, allegedly by a far-right wing extremist. For those who don't know, far-right is white nationalism again. And they also went on, in one quiet area of Berlin, local residents are being targeted by far-right people. BBC again ran this headline this week: El Paso shooting. Has the US neglected fight against white extremism? You seeing the pattern? BBC again this week, quoting Yvonne Diaz, who burst into tears like the Greenberg girl who turns up at every event wailing into a mobile phone. She said, quote, "I've never ever been scared of being Hispanic ever before, but now I am." And that went right around the world. But I wonder how much that girl was paid to read that script. Of course, there's never been gun violence on a mass scale in Hispanic countries, has there? Oh no, that never happens. There's never been any Mexican cartels, no FARC guerrillas, no MS-13 gangs. Dearie me. I've never been scared of being a Hispanic ever before. These people love their fear programs. That's what they're doing. And they're pushing it all onto one group, then connecting it to the government because it fits their agenda. And it's up to us all to stop their agenda-driven drivel the media is providing to us on a daily basis. So we had 3 shootings, 3 similar looking white men, a media narrative of white supremacists rammed down everyone's throats, and for those too stupid to get it, the American people are being steered into civil war. That's what they're doing. And one hopes you all have more intelligence than to fall for that nonsense. People of all colours have to get smart. They've pulled this stunt on us several times, so we fight each other and leave them alone. Dig deeper and you will find we all have a common enemy. Even this week, Trump made a speech on where he appealed for unity over racism. But only in the American media, politicians and the criminal corrupt BBC can that message be deemed as a negative. He is correct. I would have liked him to have gone further and tell the public you are being played by think tank groups and agenda-driven Democrats. That party is the last ever to talk about racism, given the paramilitary arm of the Democrat Party was and is the KKK. The same KKK that was created for and by the Democrats in the 1860s. That murdered Republican politicians and tens of blacks in a convention in the same time period. Go and check it out for yourselves. The media turned on, well, it wasn't just the media, they'll jump in on anything, but the mayor of Chicago decided to attack Ivanka this week for highlighting a range of deadly shootings in Chicago again this week. Happens every week. And she said, as we grieve over the evil mass shootings in El Paso and Dayton, let us not overlook that Chicago experienced its deadliest weekend of the year, with 7 dead and 52 wounded near a playground in the Windy City, and little national outrage or media coverage. And she said, we mustn't become numb to the violence faced by inner city communities every day. Again, all sounds good to me and the average person, except the media, and except the Obama-backed Chicago mayor, Lori Lightfoot. She took umbrage because Ivanka, in a tweet, not a letter, which means it only contains a number of characters, that all the incidents took place in or near a playground. She picked up on that. A typical ridiculous response and a deliberately misrepresented to fit an agenda. The number of people Ivanka reported dead was 7. Official death reports 7. Number of people Ivanka said was wounded 52. Official number reported of being wounded 52. Both of which was correct, regardless of which part of Chicago it took place in. And it's this type of childish responses that the American people need to wake up to. Whilst they bicker over minute details, they are neglecting their real responsibility of looking after the region and the people they are paid to do so. Let's have a look, like Amy Berman Jackson, let's have a look at who is Lori Lightfoot and what has she done to prevent more gun violence in Chicago. Is it Miss Lightfoot or Light Brain? One has to ask. 293 gun deaths in Chicago this year alone, which is only 33 short of the whole of last year. And she needs to focus on that, not misrepresenting tweets. But Miss Lightfoot has other issues in the background, and one has to question why she's even got such a high promotional position to begin with. Let's look at what happened with her in 1999. Lightfoot was issued a warning for misconduct by the Judge Richard Posner in a case in which she was found by the United States Court of Appeal for the Seventh Circuit to have, quote, misled a United States Circuit judge regarding a suspect's whereabouts. In other words, hiding criminals. Which then made it impossible for the judge to get a stay of extradition of that subject to Norway. Even after that, was appointed originally into public office by Rahm Emanuel. And you all know how corrupt he is. Who she eventually succeeded as mayor, despite her poor record, as Lightfoot faced criticism from criminal justice activists over her poor record when she worked in police accountability and also as a prosecutor. She actually was making police accountable, well, clearly not when she's hiding suspect whereabouts back in 1999. So let's see whether her police accountability and how the police work in her latest statement 2 months ago, when she announced that the city's police department would not assist US immigration and customs enforcement raids, denying ICE access to the city's police database in effort to protect the city's immigration population from the threats of deportation. Is it any wonder Chicago is in such a state, appointing mayors with poor working practices and methods from previous posts? Now, to tie all this in, the news story earlier from Johannesburg, the headline it didn't show was of what took place. It didn't say the headline, "Blacks don't want immigrants." Now, if that would have been in a white region, and I'm not comparing, we're both equal. What I'm talking about here is an agenda that's been forced down people's throats. Two questions as why the difference in narrative, and would that mean all black people? Or all white people, all white supremacists, whatever that means? Well, you didn't see that headline because A, it's not on their agenda, and secondly, broad sweeping any group is pure folly to begin with. But we, the people, we have to get smarter. The enemies are not us, it's these think tank policymakers who deliberately create these events, that they've done it all of our lives. It's problem, reaction, solution, over and over again. Don't react the way they want. They want the black people to feel like the whites are attacking them all the time, or the Hispanics. No, they're not. These are created events, all designed to get us all fighting each other. That's why I played the song at the beginning, The Power of Love. We all need to embrace each other, not fight. And it's something that people should ponder on after their repeated attempts now to wipe us all out via wars, famine, vaccines and viruses. People should consider perhaps this is their latest version, and also a much cheaper version than other policies to get us to wipe each other out. Think about that long and hard, please.